welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. You're here because, like us, you believe that sport is a vehicle for elevating global consciousness. But you know that elevating global consciousness through sport only matters if it actually helps you to compete at your highest level. We created this show to empower your performance with the wisdom and techniques of the world's highest achieving mind, body, and spirit competitors. Okay, so today's guest is a master of two seemingly competing ideas, achieving on the world's highest stage and the art of non-attainment. He is a multiple-time Olympic rower, and in 2008, he was part of the Canadian men's 8 team that won the gold medal. He has won over 60 medals in his career as a rower, 43 of which were gold medal performances. A couple of years after retiring from Olympic competition in 2008, the itch to continue rowing and finding his edge through adventure resurfaced in the form of a project he put together that became the first ever attempt to row over 4,000 miles unsupported across the Atlantic Ocean from Dakar, Senegal to Miami, Florida, which was the subject of the NBC Dateline documentary Capsized. 73 days into his team's journey across the ocean, their sleeping cabin flooded and their boat capsized inside the Bermuda Triangle, ending their journey and leaving them literally stranded in a tiny lifeboat in the middle of the ocean. Despite failing to attain the massive goal he set out to accomplish, he used his ability to reflect, learn, grow, and let it go to turn this journey into even more fuel for his already blazing fire. As a management consultant, social entrepreneur, executive coach, and TEDx speaker, he has taught hundreds of thousands of people at some of the world's biggest organizations, including Microsoft, General Electric, Mercedes-Benz, and L'Oreal, just to name a few, the strategies and skills of leadership, high performance, and perseverance. He's a former board member of the Canadian Olympic Committee and Clean Air Champions, chairs the board of the Cochin Energy Alternatives, is a champion for the Canadian Men's Health Foundation, and holds a degree in geotechnical engineering and hydrology from Stanford University. It's my pleasure to introduce to Omni Athlete the man who believes in setting clear goals and embracing the happy fail, Adam Kreek. Welcome to the show, Adam.
It's great to be here, Josh.
All right, man. Let's, they're literally about this. There are so many places that I feel like we could start, but I actually, in doing the research for this episode, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but coming out of high school, you took a break before you went to university, before you kind of took a pause on your athletic and just, career in general. And I would love to share, or love for you to share why you decided to make that choice. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, it was I guess the proverbial gap year, but it wasn't a gap year that at the outset was intended to be a gap year. I thought that after high school, I saw that there were so many different paths to take, yet it seemed throughout high school, everyone was pushing me and everyone else to go to university. And I thought, well, there's a bigger world than this. I just want to see it and see if this is an actual path I want to take. So I moved to Northern Alberta, and I decided to work on the oil rigs. And you said this was a break from my athletic career, but I would argue that this was actually an expression of my athleticism, and it built a level of rigor and toughness that I benefited from throughout my athletic career. Working hard manual labor in very extreme climates, minus 40-degree weather, plus 30-degree weather. This is Celsius. I'm Canadian, like the rest of the world, unlike you Americans who who waffle in the past. What is this Fahrenheit, anyways? But but anyways, minus 40 is minus 50 is about the same in Fahrenheit as it is in Celsius. It's blooming cold. It's really cold, and you're outside. You're slamming steel. So I went up there, to pursue a sense of adventure, to pursue a sense of self-discovery. It was me, coming of age. I left home. I had to fend for myself. It was a threshold moment, I suppose, where I went out there and I said, hey, look, I'm my own man. I'm creating my own destiny. I'm exploring the world for what it is, to see if, to see what is out there. And after being out, in the workforce, working probably for was a relatively short time. It seemed like a long time when you're young, but after about 6 months, I remember I was working in this shack. It's called the accumulator shack, where there's all these hydraulic pipes, and it controls it controls the blowout prevention equipment. And I was there cleaning, and I was working on some pipe fitting, and I thought, you know what, this rowing thing is unfinished, and it's a path that I really need to take because it just feels unfinished, and I need to take that path. And so that was the turning point. It was epiphanal to me, but from a storytelling perspective, it was me just working in an accumulator shack, spending too much time on my thoughts, doing physical labor, thinking there's got to be something better than this, and that was rowing.
So, and this is, I've got a couple of reasons for asking this question, but I'm super interested, Adam. What do you think would have happened if you hadn't taken that break?
Well, I would have had a different path. I don't think I would have moved as far west. Had I not taken the break, I would have probably gone to a school in my hometown or a couple hours drive away from my hometown. I don't know if I would have been able to pursue rowing to the level that I did because of my wandering. I moved to a school that was right next to the training center. And by being that close to people who were excellent in the sport of rowing, I was able to acquire knowledge quicker and acquire skills quicker. So my life would have been completely different, and I have no idea what would have happened. But again, especially throughout my youth, I had this philosophy of following the energy. Feel the energy inside. We all have an energy, and sometimes we stifle it, and sometimes we can empower it. And and for me, the energy was taking me out to the rigs, and then when I was on the rigs, the energy was taking me further west to Victoria, BC, where the training center was. So there's and there's a monetary incentive too, and this is close to 20 years ago, and I was making like $80,000 a year straight out of high school, working hard on the rigs. And I came from a lower middle class family, and this was big money, and it fueled, to be honest, being a rower doesn't make you a lot of money. So the bank account that I gained from a year of working this hard labor actually gave me the resources to go to school, to pay for my tuition, to pay for my living, and work through the point until I was able to access karting funding and to train full time as an Olympian. So there's also there's the financial side too.
Totally. And it seems like the reason I asked this too, Adam, is because I think and I'm sure you've seen this too, in athletics, talented athletes, and I shouldn't say talented in the sense that they don't work hard, but just athletes that get into a position in high school where they are being told repeatedly and just are being shown a path towards that next stage of competition, have a really hard time seeing a perspective in the world that says maybe I could pause, or maybe I could benefit from even a minute pause. And a lot of that is factors that are outside of their control, right? The environment and the culture don't necessarily support or reward people for taking that decision. But it just struck me when I heard that as such a level of self-awareness that could benefit a lot of athletes.
Well, and I know a lot of athletes who have successfully taken pause. And I think of one athlete here in Canada, Patrick Chan, who's a figure skater. And it's fairly typical for Olympic athletes in a post-Olympic year to really step back and do something completely different. But that was something he did 3 years ago, and then had great success at the last Olympics in Korea. But I think it is something to be said, and also makes me think of other information in my brain about how athletes become successful, and it's by having a diverse experience, a diverse array of athletic experiences. You need to have that that rigor and that strength and that resiliency that doesn't necessarily come from sport specific training. It comes from what I would call old man strength. When I started coaching younger athletes, you realize that too much sport specificity was weak. When you become a very good rower, you become good at rowing. When you become a very good hockey player, you become good at hockey. And and then the ability to transfer that athleticism to something else, diminishes the better you get at a sport. But on the other side, you're also exposed to injury. And so by not exposing yourself to other physical movements, you lower your resiliency physically. And spiritual resilience, we were talking about spirituality, and emotional resilience are highly linked to physical resilience as well. And so I think by taking a gap year, it can make you a more resilient athlete, physically, obviously, through cross training, we know the benefits of that, but also mentally and spiritually.
Yeah, and this takes me to a really interesting point too, which is the idea of pain, right, and injury. And I would start this by asking, what has been your relationship to pain through your career, and really what role does that play in being at your edge, right? And I ask this intentionally because I'm really curious.
I'm a mild masochist. I love the joy of pain, and that's perhaps why one of the reasons why I was attracted to the sport of rowing, because it is a sport that is extremely physical, and the athlete who can suffer is the athlete who can get ahead. And so I'd say my relationship with pain, and it almost went to an unhealthy level on the other side, the unhealthy level of pain seeking. Masochism is finding pleasure in pain. That's what you'd call it. And sometimes I would find, within training, I was not hurting enough, and I was not feeling like I was pushing myself into a deep enough pit. And so I'd look for ways to challenge my body and to challenge myself. And especially when I was a young athlete, when you're a young athlete, you challenge your body, and then as you get older, your body starts to challenge you. And so I think that's what happened as I reached, say, maturity in my late 20s, and even now, just being a citizen athlete in my late 30s, finding a balance between finding pleasure in beating yourself down, and maintaining a level of health and physicality that is sustainable. So there's the balance that needs to be had, but pain is wonderful. It's a teaching tool. Pain shows us that we're alive. Pain shows us where our limits are, and unless we know where our limits are, we cannot push them. And that's the benefit of pain. That's the gift of pain. Pain gives us thought to pause. Pain gives us a thought to be conscious. And even as I sit there, I am an old athlete now, and I close my eyes and I can feel all the different pain in my body. My ankle, I twisted it a while ago. I've got low back pain. I've got stiff neck. I've got mild arthritis in my hands, and it's good. It reminds me that I'm alive.
There's such a so the emotions that go with pain are really interesting, and what I would be really curious to learn too is, how did you, one of the things I heard you say, and I find this to be utterly fascinating because I don't think enough people are open with this, to be an Olympic athlete, right, to compete at that truly at the highest level, it literally, I believe you said something, it comes down to just truly who can put themselves in more pain for a longer amount of time, or who can be at that edge more consistently without breaking down in a way that you can't perform. And I wonder, number one, how do you balance the emotions that go with that and the mental health side of that, right? Like truly being able to keep that in perspective and keep that, it's just part of a bigger goal. That seems super challenging.
It's very challenging. And I was lucky enough to have mentors and sports psychologists that would help me through this journey. When we talk about the mental health side of pain, I remember talking to my sports psychologist, Bruce Pinnell, and he said the number one, he has two challenges, and they're kind of they're different. And the number one challenge that is brought to him and is through injury, and the loss of volition that comes through injury, the feeling of weakness, devastation, and there's a lot of soul searching, and especially in the male psyche. And then on the other side, there's a lot of, say, body image issues when he was dealing with female athletes, because as an athlete, your body changes, and it doesn't necessarily change the way that society says it should, as a woman. But because we're talking about pain and we're talking about injury, I'll focus on the first one, and I don't pretend to be an expert on body image either. So, but but on what we're talking, the emotions of pain. So I had a low back injury, L4, L5, L5, S1. The discs, bulged and herniated and, pushed into my nerves and created a lot of pain. And the physical pain was very tough. The emotional pain and the spiritual pain was also very, very weighing, because there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with it. One is that you've chosen a certain path, and the only way that you can continue on this path is to heal. And there's only so much that doctors can do. And I remember my coach, Bruce Pinnell, he gave me a couple of really good pointers. One was, hey Kreek, the route, the goal remains. The goal remains. You still want to be up here. You still want to go to the Olympics. You still want to win a gold medal. It's just that the path has changed, right? The goal remains. It's just the path has changed. The other one was he sat me down and he drew a little picture on a piece of paper, and he said, Kreek, in life, there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't control. Everything that you can control is inside this little circle. Everything you can is out here. Focus on what you can control, ignore the rest. There's this locus of control, which has been widely studied in psychological circles. And so that was very helpful, and it was very empowering. It was a pep talk. And one of the other benefits of pain and physical pain is that you become very vulnerable and open to whatever. And because there's an element of helplessness and hopelessness. So if someone can give you hope, then maybe that can help. That's why some people can make thousands, if not millions of dollars selling special vials of water that you can take, and send me $20, I'll give you this water, you drink it and you'll feel better. And if it works, right, maybe. But but what happened to me when I would go and I in between all of my different physiotherapy and doctor's appointments, I remember walking to this one natural healing, spiritual healing bookstore, and I picked up classic text now, Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. And remember, that was my meditation throughout my injury. I had in an injury, we had a really great medical team, and I had a lot of different people who helped out, but that was my meditation. How is my ego contributing to this injury? How is my pain body contributing to this injury? He gave great insights on, into this idea of group ego, which I found particularly resonant. Being in a team sport and feeling like within a rowing boat. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here.
Good.
But again, but we talk about the emotions of pain and how do you get through it, and rowing's a great metaphor of teamwork, right? We rely on other people to push us through pain and take us to new levels. And rowing's such a unique sport because you have 8 people who are in a shell, and their seats are moving together. Seats are moving together. Their arms are moving together. Their backs are moving together. So everybody's moving in unison, moving in unison. And all of us can think of this, this point in time when you're exercising, you're training, you're going for a run or you're swimming, and you reach this point in time where you're about to hit the wall, and you're like, do I stop because I can't go anymore, or do I go forward? And as an individual, you either stop or you go forward, and you find something through that. When you're sitting in the middle of a rowing boat, an 8-person rowing boat, and you have 7 other athletes around you, and you hit that wall and you say, I don't think I can row another stroke. Yet, the other 7 say, we're going more and we're going harder. They take you with them. And so there's this humility and gratefulness and trust and that is built in that sort of environment. And you walk through pain barriers and walls of pain, within that style of activity within a rowing shell that you don't necessarily do in other types of boats or other disciplines. And so it's and it's been shown by evolutionary biologists and studies. I think a couple studies out of Oxford or certainly out of England, where they show that you produce more endorphins when you exercise as a group, and it's very similar to what group choirs or group singing or group dancing, group exercising, and you actually one can endure more pain, and you can exercise harder when you do it as a group. So you get fitter, you endure pain more. And so that's, I feel so grateful and reliant upon my team and the support network that I had available to me, because no person ever does anything on their own, and especially in very low points when you're feeling uncertain and so vulnerable. Like this injury, working through the emotions of pain, having support like Bruce Pinnell, having a coach who's pushing you, who's saying, are you sure that you still hurt, or maybe you can maybe you can come back, keep pushing the edge, keep pushing, because too often we get scared of the edge, and to have someone who keeps pushing to the edge is a gift too.
So you've answered this a little bit already, but I find it really energizing when we talk about the ability for relationships to help you push that edge, right? And to help you really look at expanding your capacities. What was the communication like, or is it, within teams that you've been part of or that you work with, in what are the patterns that really allow them to push their edge collectively? What does that look like?
Well, I do. I do a bit of management consulting. That's kind of like half of my desk, and I work with these executive teams around the place. And I'm just looking at my wall because I have the values of one organization, and we work through it. And I'm just going to share it with you guys, because I think that these values really show how relationships allow us to push our edge. And it starts with respect. Show respect. So respecting one another. Respect begins with me. I'm not going to get respect from you unless I give you respect. I have to understand that you have something unique to say, and I need to be open to listen to what has happened, And the second one is being open. So it's, so if I'm respecting what you have to say, and then I'm open, and I say, well, your idea could be the next great idea. This feedback, this interchange could help lift me up. And then the final one is driving improvement. So making sure that the higher goal is clarified, that we know that we're doing this to get better. And I respect you, and I'm open with communication and feedback. And it's a dialogue. It's not one way. Dialogue is a great word because it goes 2 ways. And finally, with the higher goal of just making it better, and everybody buying into that higher goal of improving, that's how relationships push the edge. And that was if I look back at my career as an adventurer, why did we stay alive in the middle of the ocean? Well, we had these three things: respect, openness, and a drive for doing great things. And certainly that existed on my Olympic boat and other great boats that I competed on.
I think there's this natural tendency to separate intensity and love when it comes to really high-level athletics. And I get the sense from just culturally, right? We have this kind of disassociation that love means we're going to be soft, we're going to be, we're going to protect each other. There's connotations with it that when I hear, somebody like you speak, and when I hear the energy that you guys work with, and when we truly peel back what it means to be authentic in communication, love has a much different meaning, right? It has a much different understanding for us, in that it's our responsibility to push the other people if we're genuinely going for this goal. And I would love for you to share what has love meant to you as both a competitor on those teams? What role does it have right now in the work?
Well, love is such a complicated word because there are so many different expressions of it. And when I think of love on these teams, it was very much a brotherly love, a soldierly love, a comradeship, a brothers in arms, and it was very fraternal. And the athletes with whom I competed are they're like brothers to me. They're very, very close. They're closer to me than even my own brother and I are. And so there is an intensity and there is a love, but it's when you talk about love and acting tenderness, and I'm saying yes, it is a love, but it is a tough love, and it's a truthful love. And what I find, and what's popping up in my mind, especially I'm a father, I have 3 children, and I know the intensity with which I would train alone. But I cannot train with that intensity when my children are around, for fear that I might hurt them, I might scare them, I might create an environment that's not safe. Because when I'm pushing the limits of my physicality, it's very aggressive, it's violent, it's intense. And I think there's, and then there's like romantic love. And so I'd say that it's, love in a sense of, committing, that you're very committed to each other, and that love, trust, faith, commitment, and everybody's united under the same goal can happen, but love can be expressed in different ways. And sometimes, like I said, a familial love will weaken you. And even I remember, we have flashbacks, but to the Olympics, I minimized the interaction I had with my wife, and in these intense situations, because this kind of like romantic sexual love, it took off my edge of being able to reach that level of intensity. So it was, when we talk about love, it's love for your teammates. I would have love for my competitors. Actually, I'd sit there and I'd thank them. I'd say, thank you for competing with me. Thank you for allowing me to beat you. Thank you for coming here so I can beat you. but and enjoy in community. That's the beauty of international competition. You meet people from all over the world, and you become pretty good friends. And love for the sport, love for the activity, love for the consciousness that comes through a very extreme circumstance like that. So that's the expression of love that is helpful.
No, it's great, and I one of the things that I'm really curious about you. So within the context of your team, as you reflect back, are there moments, are there ways that you guys developed communication patterns that allowed that trust and that safety to build so that you guys could push each other to those edges? It seems so often that, and I think you even talk about this in different talks that you've given, criticism has this really intense effect on us, right? And especially when it comes from people we're close with. In some ways, it's almost easier to receive criticism from a stranger than it is to receive it from a coach who's with you 24/7 or teammate. Yet it's so critical to taking that next step. And I wonder what you felt like was able to be creative within your team to allow each other to push and to challenge and to say, no, you're better. Show me something more to take that next step.
I'm going to start with telling you about our coach, who was very aware of the fact that the athlete will best absorb information when they're looking for it. So you're most open to feedback when you're asking for it. That's another way of putting it. Our coach would be out with us 24/7. He was the first one to the boathouse, last one to lead. But when we were undergoing practice, he would say very little, and he would stick to a very high level. And then he would, at the end of practice, he would say, "If you want some coaching," he's a British guy. "If you want some coaching, I'll stay on the water. Just find me." And so eventually, what would happen is we were racing and against each other. We raced in the 8, but we'd race in singles and pairs, and so we'd have 8 boats racing up and down this lake. And at the end of a couple practices where you're finishing last or 5th or 4th, you're thinking, I should be better. I want to figure out how to do this, and then you go up and Sprackling gives you some feedback, and that's just the feedback you needed, and it was super insightful, and wow, that was amazing. So there's, to a certain extent, what we all can learn from as a feedback giver, as someone who wants to deliver feedback, is restraint. So it has to start with me as an individual restraining the feedback I give until the listener is ready, waiting for that opportune time, those teachable moments, where both the teacher and the student are open to receiving. And then there's feedback. You move down, the level of hierarchy and say, amongst equals. How does feedback amongst equals or teammates? How can you do that effectively? And I think when I think to, even to our 8, it would come out delicately. You say, I know we're in this together. I know we all want to win and we all want to get a little bit better. And, this is what I see you're doing with your blade. Your blade skying is doing this. Do you think you could, is that something that you're aware of? And I suppose you're asking questions. You're not saying you are doing this wrong. Instead you're saying, do you know that you're doing this? What do you think of this? Is this something that you think could make you a faster rower? Is this something you think could make us one inch closer to becoming an Olympic champion? Asking questions is a great way to create trust and safety within the team. Another, and uniting under a higher goal. Like in sport, it's really easy. What is that higher goal? And clearly defining it. I think some people say, well, the goal for a men's 8 is to win the Olympics, but maybe not. Some guys go, the goal is to make the final. Some the goal is to medal. Some the goal is to have the race of your life that makes you proud. That gives you your Olympic moment. And everybody can have different goals, but you just want to make sure that everybody in the team knows what that shared goal is, knows what that higher goal is, and they buy into it. And the final point that I would say in this 3-pointed rambling essay that I'm delivering, the first being, wait until the recipient's open to receive feedback. 2, ask a lot of questions. And then the third one, debate ideas, not people. Debate ideas, not people. So making sure that when you're having a disagreement and you're having a dialogue, when you're presenting feedback, that you are you're debating a concept, not an individual.
So let's take a slight left turn. I think it's very much connected,
Okay.
but I'm Sure. Yeah, exactly. So tell me about the difference in the feelings you had after the 2004 games versus the 2008 games, and obviously on the surface they're drastically different outcomes. But what were the emotions and the feelings you as a human being had in those different moments, and how did that impact you?
Well, in 2004, I went to the Olympics with my team with the expectation of winning an Olympic gold medal, and we fell apart. We had our first race. We raced against the Americans. You jerk, Josh. Americans, all you Americans out there, you created the worst day of my life. But we had the heat at the Olympics. We broke the world record, but the Americans beat us. So we both our boats broke the world record in the heat, and they beat us by a bit. So we went into the repechage, which is kind of like a second chance heat to make it to the final. And in the middle of the repechage, we experienced a small injury in our strokeman. He injured himself, and in the final, we. Americans took the lead, then, the Aussies and the Dutch and the Germans all rode through us. And it was just a depressing, crushing, sad moment. And I remember crossing the finish line, and at the end of a rowing race, win or lose, you are so empty. You're so empty physically. You've put everything that you have, and there's nothing left. And that's part of the reason why sport is so fascinating to watch, because you don't have the energy or the capacity to resist any emotion or feeling that comes into you. So you're just seeing raw human, or and for us it was we were crying. It was like I remember holding my hand in my head, and we sat there. No one said anything, and I just remember I was physically sore. I was emotionally sore. I don't think I was quite crying. I was just like devastated, empty, and like, I can't believe this just happened. Everything. This is not the way it was supposed to end. This was, and part of it was expectations. We had won the world championships the year before, and we had a very strong crew that was competitive with the world, and we didn't even win a medal. These fell apart so much that we fell off the podium, and we rode to the dock, and we got out. I remember hugging guys and just holding, like sobbing, like having man cries with other guys. Right? It's like whoa, and it was that we felt that we'd let ourselves down, we'd let each other down. And even to this day, the athletes that rode with me in 2004, who didn't have a chance, to have an element of redemption in 2008, I think some of them still hold a very heavy heart when it comes to that experience, because it was crushing. We knew that we had better potential, and the potential wasn't received. And then there's a feeling of wasted life force. Why did I do this? Like, I just spent 4 fucking years doing this. For what? To be an Olympic loser? Like, come on. And I'm not getting paid for this. How does this give me more opportunity in life? How does this make me feel better for myself? And right. And so there was all that sort of, wondering and doubt. And eventually the philosophy I developed for myself was the idea of nodes. You know how within a plant, a node will develop, and that node becomes bigger, and then different branches will come off of it. Or if you think of networks, or even the brain, right? You can have a node within your brain that becomes an anchor point, and the more you revisit it, like you building this podcast, the more you revisit this podcast and you do it, that node becomes bigger and bigger, and then more and more ideas can come off of it. And so the idea that I came to is, well, here I've been focusing on this rowing, and I've been focusing on. I've been building this big node, and I guess it's created opportunities for me, even in failure, even in the fact that I didn't quite get my end goal. I still have opportunities that came out of it. And one of the opportunities that came was for me to go down to California, go to Stanford University, get a degree in geotechnical engineering, be exposed to one of the finest academic institutions in the world, and it was just, it was a gift. And so I thought, I guess it wasn't all for naught. It was this is, in hindsight, you can make the best of these failures. And so then contrast that to the feelings of 2008, where, again, you cross the finish line, you're absolutely exhausted, and so you have no ability to resist the emotion, and so you say, I just won! Oh! Then you look in front of you, and there's your buddy. Yeah, we just won! Yeah! It was just, is it like unrestrained limbic joy, whatever you want to call it? But you're exhausted, but somehow you find the energy to celebrate, and versus sitting there pouting for 5 minutes till you can find the strength to pull yourself to the loser dock. And then after that, it was it's a whirlwind. I remember afterward we got our medals, which was fascinating. I remember going to the media, and there was this one woman, her name was Christy Blatchford, and she kept asking questions, and I just couldn't restrain. Like, I'm kind of a naturally exuberant type of person, as you may or may not tell, but I just couldn't like restrain my joy. And I remember whatever verbiage I was downloading to her, I was just like Care Bears, how they have like the Care Bear stare. I felt like I was just like downloading all this joy to her, and she was just like, whoa, like, wow. that's just, I just remember seeing her reaction and thinking, maybe I just came on a little too strong here, but I'm excited. So there's that brief moment of victory, right? There's the moment of victory, which is great. It's wonderful. Afterwards, I had a personal, tradition where after every race I'd go down to the water and I'd be there alone. I'd sit there alone and kind of meditate by the water and just kind of let the fog of war settled, and I'd just and regardless if it was at post failure or post win, it was always a feeling of peace. Okay, the battle's over, and here I am. And it was just an exhale after. It's intense, the nerves, the energy, the physical output. It's a good release. But then the interesting, the one feeling that I wasn't quite expecting after 2008, it was the feeling of, what was this for? What was the point? Why did I do this? Because again, you reach to the top of the mountain, and you look around, and then you climb back down, because you can't stay at the top of the mountain forever. It's peak moments are called peak moments for a reason, because they are a peak which lasts for a very short moment of time. And so coming, I'm going to circle back to this idea of pain we talked about earlier. It's like the joy of victory is wonderful, but the meaning of life comes from suffering, and too much absence from suffering almost creates more suffering, because you feel like you don't deserve to suffer anymore. Now that I'm victorious, I should never have suffering in my life again. And it can create an eerie depression. And I would see it overtake some people. I called it gold medal syndrome, where you won and you almost became more depressed and more despondent post victory than you would have had you not achieved your dreams, or achieved a good performance you were proud of, but not the best.
So what did you do to transmute that energy, right? So what comes to mind as you right there is this notion that, so you to get to the mountaintop, you had to cultivate this just intense energy and focus. And truly, I think, within some realm of spirituality, a feeling of a higher purpose to what you're doing and just a connection to it, right? You're driving. When you get done, how did you take that energy and turn it into something that could continue to feed that athletic soul, so to speak, without just, as you just said, having that gold medal syndrome where suddenly it's just a crater, and even though you've won, you've almost lost?
In life, energy goes up and down, up and down. Motivation goes up and down, up and down. And every once in a while, we're very lucky to have, high energy and a positive experience align, and that is magical, gold medal moment. Wow. But then there's the obvious hangover from the peak moment. And there's two, and so after the peak moment, because you've put out a lot of energy, you're going to have low energy. You're going to have low energy after that. And so low energy can either be negative or low energy can be positive. So low energy could be depression, despondency, soul searching, or low energy could be a break, removal, peace, introversion. Introversion in the most positive sense of the word. And so for me, when I think about energy transmutation, or I think of experience transmutation, it's one asking the question, what is my energy level at this moment? And what is consciously contributing to the fatigue? If I'm feeling tired, is there anything invisible like emotional labor or other stresses in my life that could be contributing to like the stress or fatigue, and acknowledging what those are, and then trying to have as positive an interaction with that energy level as possible. So low energy, could be depression or it can be peace. Go to the opposite end. Very high energy can be amazing, or it can be anxiety. It can be like, I've got all this energy, but I don't want to act. Elephant on your chest, and you're paralyzed with too much energy. And so I think it's, say, well, instead of, and often when I was much younger, I would say, here I am in this low energy state and I'm negative. I want to be high energy positive. Right? Or I'm in this anxious state, like I'm high energy negative. I want to be peace again. I want to be low energy positive. And the epiphany came to me when I thought, instead of being high energy negative and anxious, let's try to turn this into focus. Let's turn this into action. So I can be high energy. It's a lot easier to turn high energy negative to high energy positive than to low energy positive. Likewise, I'm depressed and I'm soul searching. It's a lot easier to turn low energy negative into low energy positive than it is to turn low energy negative into high energy positive. Mm-hmm. So it's, acknowledge the energy level, accept the energy level, look for the positive in that energy level, and look to express yourself in that. And then eventually, then the energy returns, because it allows you're at low energy because you need to recover. You can't be, full on all the time.
It's a moment. It's not every moment, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I find really interesting, Adam, is this notion of spirituality within sport. And when we first talked, that was one of the ideas that we said this would be a fun one to come back to. And so I would love, in just a very general sense, to open that question to you right now and say, what does that mean to you in the context of sport? You competed at the absolute highest level, and you work with people who are not just, you've worked with athletes at the highest level, but also just business people, leaders. What does that word spirituality mean to you, and how does it show up in sport?
Well, for me, spirituality is the embodiment of universal truths that are difficult to prove through science. So spirituality is the embodiment of universal truths that are difficult to prove through science. So they're truths that we know, and you can conduct social science experiments, and we get better and better at proving them. But I'll feel more love in my life if I act with charity. There's a spiritual principle, and so if I'm acting in a charitable way, then I can expect more love and happiness to exist in my life. Show it like that's great. And so when I talk about spirituality in sport and or high performance business, what are some of these principles that help you deliver your best when it is asked of you? What does it take to live your best when it is required of you? Like, there's a definite deadline, or there's a race where you need to show up and be in performance. And there's so many different angles to take on this, but I think I'm just going to come back to racing. Racing as a spiritual discipline, because it is such a unique, and racing when done properly, is very rare. You can race a lot, but I don't think you can. There are transcendent races that you can have. And I'm thinking particularly in my sport, where it is very, very physical, and you're looking to push yourself to a definite limit. Our coach would say you could probably push yourself to your complete physical limit 3 times a year. And if you do that anymore, you start getting scared. You start getting really scared of the limit because it's so painful, because it takes so long to recover from, physically, spiritually, emotionally. But and so when I talk about racing, I'm talking about the races that matter. And if you're a games athlete, like the games that matter, when you have to show up, like the championship game, making it happen. And sitting on the start line, getting ready to go into, get into the race it is a transcendent experience. You are more present than in almost any other place, because you're even from a physical perspective, right? Your adrenal glands are firing, your cortisol is firing, but you're also trying to engage relaxation at the same time. And so you're engaging breath, and and so it's really uncomfortable. So you have to find ways to manage that discomfort. Like I had a friend who said it's not about getting rid of those butterflies, it's about making them fly in formation. And I always use it's like a nuclear reactor inside. You can either have a meltdown and cause disaster, or you can harness it and you can be one of the most powerful forces in the universe. And there are simple techniques that I guess you'd call them spiritual techniques, of gratefulness. I remember waking up the morning of the Olympic final, the World Championships, the World Cup. You wake up and you just feel it. It's race day. It's like your stomach is off. Your body's like clearing itself. Like you're shitting and everything's gone, because it knows that it's go time. You're uncomfortable, but I'd say, thank you. Today is a very special day. Thank you for this opportunity to experience the extreme. Thank you for this opportunity to explore the human condition at a very rare and precious, point. And so that was one form, and the other one was curiosity, how far what can I find, what insight can I find from this extreme space of being. And and then there is and then part of spirituality is also being open. And there's a Did I tell you about body talk in our last conversation? No, like, because this, and I don't know if this is woo-woo or if it's spirituality, but again, as I define spirituality, things that you know to be true but can't be proved by science.
Yeah.
Body talk definitely falls into that category. Yeah. So the going back to this conversation on pain, when I had my back injury, I was trying all these different modalities of healing. So anyone who had a suggestion, I said, yes. Yeah. Yes, I'll try that. Yes, I'll try that. And I ended up getting directed to this woman, Susan Stenson, who is a body talk practitioner. And what, the philosophy of body talk is that your body holds within it an intelligence that sometimes your brain can't interpret, and it's something I believe that's true. Your body has an intelligence that your brain sometimes can't interpret. And so what she specialized in was using her intuition and skill to see where there were blockages within your body. And she would do something called muscle testing, where she would ask a question, and if you resisted, the answer was no, and if you did not resist, the answer was yes. And so I went there and just to cure my back, figure out what blockages were within me or my ancestors or my energy or what. I'm not a body talk expert. I don't know how it worked, but she was touching my body and feeling it and tapping, and she'd do tapping, kind of like EFT type stuff, but different. And so she was touching, tapping, feeling. Great. Okay. And I really enjoyed my time with her. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And after going back, and I laid there for 60 minutes. I thought, at the very least, like, this is like, I just enjoyed my time, in the woo-woo world. Like, it was amazing. And she said, would you like me to give you a performance energy shield for the Olympics? I thought, oh, yes. I would like a performance energy shield. Yeah. Tell me more. He says, well, it's a special shield, an energetic shield that will come around you and allow you to be your best self on that day, allow you to have your best performance, and just allow your body to do what it's supposed to do. And you do the cost, put on your rational Western mind and say, well, what's the cost of this? A pleasant hour of laughing on a warm table as Susan does her woo-woo magic on me. And, upside, well, I have a performance energy shield that science can't define. And and I can pretty much bet you that no one else on that start line will have a performance energy shield, especially one by as skilled a practitioner as Susan. And so, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I come back, and she starts running through the process of putting up this performance energy shield. So she starts asking me questions, and okay, who's the male energy embodiment of your team? Oh, it's your coach. Okay, who's the female energy embodiment of your team? Oh, it's your coach's wife. Oh, okay, and asking all these questions and testing my muscles and tapping my body. And she goes and says, what races do you have? I said, well, we got the heat, we've got the repechage, and we've got the final. So she goes through and it's like, yes, the tap, 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 ask. Yep, we've got the shield around your heat. And she starts, okay, the next one is what is it called? The repechage. The what? People don't know what a repechage is. Yeah, it's the repechage, the makeup heat. And so she goes, like, your body will not let me do the repechage.
Interesting.
What? It's like, well, are you sure you're going to race the repechage? I was like, well, if we win our heat, we don't do the repechage. It's like, well, you're going to win your heat. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, well, let's do the final now. So she go through and tap, 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 tap. Okay, thank you, Susan. I don't tell anyone this because it's again, it would weird some people out. This stuff weirds people out in funny ways. And part of being upon a team is respecting people's different viewpoints and their beliefs and setting up confidence and trust within everyone else. So it was something that I kept to myself. So we get to the Olympics, and it's you're in the lion's den. It's fiery, nerves are everywhere, and the littlest thing becomes the biggest thing just because that's the nature of competition. it's time for the heat. We go, we put our boat on the water, we get out, we start rowing around. The boat's just slamming and it's not setting up. You know, boat's long and skinny. You want it to be stable so you can just sit there and pull and work, but it's just feeling wobbly. When we do the race pieces, they feel disconnected. And I'm thinking, where the heck is this energy shield? Right? I'm like, come on, Susan, like, should have showed up. But then, in the moment, you're like, screw it. You know, okay, I got work to do. And so then you start focusing. And because what she had said was the energy shield will show up 1 hour before you cross the finish line. It will show up 1 hour when you cross the finish line. And if the race time has changed, energy knows no time and space. So it's just going to show up 1 hour before you cross the finish line. Okay. And so we just finished our warm up when thunder and lightning came. You cannot race lightning when there's lightning on the rowing course. It's too dangerous. You know, there's rowers have died struck by lightning. So go into the dock. Oh, okay. We're racing tomorrow. So, next day we show up, boat stuck like a rock. You know, everything's linked. You know, energy shield in place. Right, and we go. We do the heat. We get off the start of the heat. The Aussies break their rudder and they're coming right for us in the heat of the race. And I'm sitting in 7th seat, and then there's Kyle in stroke seat, and then Brian's in front. And so everyone on our boat is watching this Aussie boat, and they're coming to crash. Like, they were literally going to crash into our boat. And Kyle goes to Brian. He's like, look, behind you. And Brian looks and he sees the boat. And if these boats crash, we're in China, but there's no replacement boats. They're $60,000 piece of equipment. They're highly specialized. You just don't go to the store and buy an Olympic racing shell. And so it's coming towards you. And Brian looks over and he says, 5 strokes now. And our boat, like, I've never felt a rocket ship like that in a rowboat ever in my life. But we were at race pace, and then we went race pace plus. And it was like, and the Aussies just kind of, went behind us, and we won the heat, no repechage, won the Olympics, and it's all because of Body Talk Performance Energy Shield. I'll tell you that.
So what's so incredible, right, is there are so many pieces to this, right? But what comes to mind for me that's so energizing is the openness that you had in those moments, right? So like as athletes, there are so many athletes that are open to these different healing modalities that are probably not encouraged to even explore them because of the culture that's around them, right? Like you said, it is a challenge still to navigate those interpersonal relationships and know that not everybody's going to say, okay, if I do a Reiki session before I compete, or if I'm really, really glued into EFT, or whatever the case may be, there are still these barriers, yet you were open enough to step into it and then just allow it to be what it was going to be. That's absolutely amazing.
Oh, and it's, I've got a good friend and colleague, Trent Stellingwerf, who's the head of the Canadian Sports Center Pacific Physiology, or he runs physiology there. I'm not exactly sure what his title is, but great physiologist, one of the best sports physiologists in Canada. And we talk about the placebo effect, and he says, the placebo effect is a documented effect. And, not only as a sports physiologist is it my responsibility to give you protocols that are proven through science, it's also my responsibility to access the placebo effect and make it work for you. Like that's the best coach, the coach who accesses, the truth of science and the truth of the placebo effect. And there is, and to a certain extent, maybe in 50, 100 years, we'll be able to prove how and why some of these modalities work. But at the end of the day, it's, is this modality hurting you? 1, 2, is this modality getting in the way of you relating with your team or your coach, or is this destroying social relationships? well, no, like what's the cost, and then what's the benefit? And if if it works for you, do it, right? It's like that just seems like a no-brainer.
This has been incredible. Before I ask my final question, where can these guys go to find you online?
Find me online. Socially, I live mostly on LinkedIn because I'm in the world of making money. So that's where people who like making money tend to live. I find the conversations are also, at a level that I find intelligent and compelling. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can go straight to my website. I would highly recommend doing that. www.kreekspeak.com. My last name is Kreek with a K. It's an Estonian name, Kreek SPEAK. So those are the best ways, other than like coming to my house and helping me like raise my kids and play in my robot garden. But that's step number 2. Step 1, internet connection. I also play on Twitter too, like @AdamKreek. So if you like this, tweet me. We can have a Twitter friendship. As ethereal and light and non-committal as it is, we can tweet with one another. Tweet. And was that the question? How do you get in contact with me? I feel like I got lost in it.
Okay, so for my final question, this show is Omni Athlete, and it's really about understanding what it takes to be the ultimate mind, body, spirit competitor. So the final question is, what does it mean to you to be an Omni Athlete?
I tend to, when I think of definitions, I go back to the origin of the word. When I think omnipresent, omniscient, all encompassing. So to be an Omni athlete is to be an athlete who uses his or her whole being to be excellent. And you access physicality, you access intelligence, you access science, you access social networks, you access spirituality, you access whatever resources that you in your limited space can drum up to get the best out of you on the field of play.
Love it. That's incredible. Adam, thank you for being on the show. It's been energizing, and just guys, I cannot recommend highly diving into Adam's world enough. And here's where you start. Go watch his TED Talk, and then go back and search through the different videos that he's got online. And one of the things that you are going to learn so fast is this dude is so authentic and so real and so in touch with what it means to be a self-aware athlete. It's energizing and it's refreshing. And I think everything that he stands for and that his team does now through Kreek Speak, through the consulting they do, the speaking they do, it's not about whether it's spirit or energy or consciousness. It's about performance, and it's about understanding, can you be better by accessing pieces of your being that aren't just, can I lift more weight, run faster, jump higher, row faster, whatever the case may be. Can I do things beyond just the physicality of movement that allow me to be a better competitor? And that is absolutely apparent. And one of the other things that you're going to realize is that language. Listen to how Adam talks. It's so energizing because you guys can feel he's creating the reality he steps into, and that has allowed him to realize performance at the highest possible level, and you guys can do the same exact thing. So go kreekspeak.com, watch his videos, just read the articles he posts, whatever you can to get inside his world. I highly recommend it. Until next time. What is up, Omni Athletes? Thank you guys for watching another episode of Omni Athletes. If this content is adding value to your lives, guys, please like and share and subscribe in every way you can. Share our content. That helps us grow this community, which is really ultimately what we are after right now. So please like, comment, share, tell your friends about what we're doing. If it's adding value, please share it. And if it's not, tell us so we can really improve this content and make sure it's something that you guys want and want to see. Coming up, guys, in July, I'm super excited to announce we have the 2018 Sports Energy and Consciousness Festival. It's going to be in San Rafael, California. This is
An absolutely incredible event for a lot of reasons. The main one being you get to actually engage with so many of the people that we've had on the show, so many of the leaders in sports, energy, and consciousness. The speakers are absolutely incredible, and the community is even more incredible. So I cannot encourage you guys enough. Get to this festival. It is going to be an experience that transforms your vision of athletics, your ability to achieve peak performance, to find flow, to awaken an expanded level of consciousness in your performance that you just cannot find anywhere else. It's truly the tip of the iceberg, and you guys want to be part of it. July 13th through 15th in San Rafael, California. Go to sportsenergyfestival.com to get your tickets today before they run out. It's going to go quick, guys. Get there. sportsenergyfestival.com, July 13th through 15th. We'll see you there.